if you were to ask me, why am I doing this? Like, why am I going on these podcasts? It's because I just watch so many of my friends and so many people I know that are just so quick to throw in the towel. And they're sitting there and they're overwhelmed. They're constantly underachieving, and they look in the mirror and they're not happy, but they don't understand that this doesn't have to be it for you. You can change this. You don't have to put the drugs down, put the bottle down. Stop going out every weekend. You're not thinking right, you're not speaking right. Just take a cold shower, man. Go for a run, do something. You can accomplish stuff if you really want it. And so I think if people try and cultivate that mind and they just challenge themselves over and over again and understand that this is all part of a growth process, I mean, they'll live much better lives and they'll help others. So I guess if you want to extrapolate my whole reason for doing this stuff, it's that message right there.
Running 100 miles seems impossible, and maybe even kind of crazy. And it is, but we believe in big crazy dreams. That's why we ran 100 miles. It was such a life-changing experience for us, we decided to devote this podcast to preparing and inspiring you to run your first ultra race.
Are you ready to feel the highest highs and the lowest lows? Are you ready to do what you once thought was impossible? Are you ready for your trail to 100? Well, Jake, thank you for joining us here on the podcast. We are so excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you guys for having me. I love what you guys are doing. So it's an honor to be part of it.
So we love what you're doing, Jake, because this really excites me. People like you, because you just go for it. So we asked you a little bit about yourself before the interview, and you talked about how you just have barely been running for a year. And within that year, you ran 2 50-mile races and 100K. So how the heck do you go from not running to running 50 milers within a year?
So I got into running basically out of looking for a new sort of a fix, like a new goal, something new to chase after. I played, college football for 5 years. I was never a runner. I ran track, but I was a sprinter, never ran more than the 400. And I was just looking for something new to go after. And I started in kind of like around April of last year. I was boxing a little bit, and then I was thinking like, I hit people with my head for 15 years, so I probably shouldn't do any more of that if I want to be a veterinary surgeon. So I kind of was like, I still want to box, but like I was just looking for something else. And one of my buddies who's in the military basically just said, go for a run. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I ended up going for a run. The basic, just new to running, never been a runner, never ran a 5K, never ran a 10K, went for like a 4-mile run, super slow pace. Heart rate was like 180 the entire time, sore for like a week after. And I just fell in love with it because I was so out of my comfort zone. It was something completely new. It was something extremely difficult that I was like, this is something I can try and conquer. And I started running more and more. And then I asked some of my vet school friends, I said, guys, let's do an ultra marathon. There's an ultra marathon in Wisconsin here in 2 months. And I've only been running for about, 2 weeks. I haven't hit double digit numbers yet. And they were all like, you are insane. You are crazy. You are going to get hurt. And I just basically got pissed off because I'm like, you guys are setting such a cap on not only me, but just on what people can do. And so I ended up signing up for that race, a 50-mile race that day and then I had 2 months to get ready for it. And I didn't know what I was getting into. I had no idea what to expect. Absolutely fell in love with it after the first one. Fell in love and decided to do another one. Decided to do another one after that, and now I'm just pushing the limits and seeing what I can do.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions, and also it makes sense now because you were hitting head so many times.
yeah, there's a correlation there.
I get it now.
I mean, people have told us that we got into the sport pretty fast, but
it took us about three years.
We ran a marathon 1 year, then we ran the 50 the next, and then we did the 100. But here you just went straight to the 50 within 2 months. Like,
okay, one question I have is, you were doing this while you were in vet school. Was that incredibly stressful, or do you feel like it maybe it wasn't stressful, maybe it helped like relieve your stress to get this training in, or how was that balance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So vet school, it isn't hard. It just requires a lot of time management, and it just requires you to be on top of your game and be very controlled in your life, because basically what I describe it is you learn kind of the same level of difficulty that you would in like a biological sciences undergrad degree, except what you would learn in a month, you learn in 1 week.
Mm.
So through being a student athlete, you are taught to manage your time to an extreme level. So I had that skill down. So now that I was done playing football, part of me was kind of like, I'm bored. Like, what am I going to do with all this time? So, yes, there was a lot of like stress with making sure I get in what I'm trying to get in, and like making sure I run and making sure I take care of my body and making sure I keep up on my studies. But this is another thing that when people say, I want to do a marathon, but I don't have the time, or I want to do an ultra one day, but I don't really have the time for that right now. And I'm like, listen, I'm in veterinarian school. I do exceptionally well in vet school. I run 50 miles a week. I work on 2 research projects. One I'm currently running by myself. I also work with a board certified surgeon in Milwaukee. And I also deliver pizzas part-time. Like,
Nice.
you have time. If you want to do something, you have time. And I encourage everybody, this is what I've done multiple times if I ever feel like overwhelmed, is I track what I'm doing for 3 days. And every hour of the day, write down what you did for that hour and write whether it was positive or negative, negative being it was a waste of time. You will see how much time you waste and how much better you could do if you were to use those hours. So it'll become very real to you. And then you'll be like, wow, I could be doing so much more. So I encourage people to do that and just think about how much time you're wasting. You cut out a lot of the social media stuff. You cut out a lot of the, going out on the weekends and wasting your time doing that kind of stuff. And you pursue some goals. You could do a lot more. So yeah, it is hard. It requires you to be on top of your work, on top of your time management, but it's doable.
Okay, that makes sense. So you developed the skills being a student athlete. So you kind of already knew how to work and work out and train at the same time. And I also love you bringing it up. When someone says I don't have the time, it's just them saying I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it, right?
I don't want to create the time.
I don't want to make the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you always can make the
Exactly.
time. I think that's a great point. I do have a question about this. So I feel like you see this a lot in the self-help books, the self-help podcasts, self-help Instagram. They're like track what you're doing and cut out the social media, cut out these things and replace them with
Productive.
productivity, right? But you can't replace every second of every day with productivity because you got to rest still, right? So what is your philosophy on like resting and recovering?
That's a good point. So I've been working with a very high level trainer for a long time. Since I was a freshman in high school, I worked at this place called Next Level. That is this high level trainer. His name is Matt Gifford. So he's an expert. He works with professional athletes. So I've kind of been taught how to incorporate rest, but that is also part of when I think of rest day, I think of that's part of my job. And that's like part of, and you have to incorporate that. So you have to make sure that you write that down. And my rest days, to be honest with you, are not me sitting on the couch with my feet up and binge watching Netflix. My rest days are either a super low level heart rate, low intensity run, or maybe I hop on the bike. Maybe I just go for a walk with my girlfriend and my dog. It's very mild stuff, but it's supposed to be almost like an active rest day. Because I think a lot of times people construe those things, right? Where they say, oh, I'm taking a rest because my legs are sore. But it's like, man, this is when you grow. This is when your legs are sore. If you learn how to push through that and go for a run with your sore legs, this isn't a time to cop out. This is a time to get better. So you have to have a fine line, but I think almost too much people use that as an excuse.
I get you.
I agree. I'm feeling like preach, brother, preach. Like I feel like if you got in the middle of town square and just start talking, people would like line up around you and they'd be like, yes, yes.
But everybody knows this and they don't do it,
Yeah.
That's the
it's
thing.
hard.
It
It's
is hard.
Jake.
It is.
Yeah.
That's worth
Yeah,
it.
it is. Yeah. I mean, and this is just a side note, and like, so in vet school, this is a perfect example of it. Is I do pretty well in vet school, and people will come up to me and say like, I'm struggling in this class. You seem to like kind of know what you're doing. Like, what do you do to prepare? How do you get good in this class? And I'll tell them, I'll say, I come to class every day. I turn my phone off when I'm in class, so that way I'm paying attention. And I also read the lectures ahead of time, and I handwrite all my notes, old school, And that way I'm sitting there, I'm engaged with the professor, I'm listening, I'm annotating. And that way I'm not just sitting there trying to learn all this stuff for the first time. I've already looked through it, I've already written it down. I'll tell people that. They'll do it for a week. And then a week later, and I'm like, do that for a month. The next exam, I guarantee you'll do better, because all it is effort. And they'll do it for a week. A week later, they're skipping class. They're on their phone. And then they come up to you and they're like, I'm so overwhelmed, bro. This professor isn't a good professor. Like, I just can't get what they're saying. I'm like, you're not even trying. You're not even trying. You're not even putting any effort, So
You're like, don't complain if you're not going to try, right?
yeah, all it takes is effort.
I love that.
I love that. Yeah. I think a lot of us look at this. I mean, especially for those outside the sport that want to get in, and they think, oh, that'd be so cool to run 100 miles. But then they think that, no, maybe that's just reserved for the elites or, the people who have time. But what you're telling me right here, I love, because you're like, no, all you have to do is be willing to put in some effort, and you can do it too. It's not for the elites. It's not, you don't have to have some special talent. You don't have to be in some special situation.
Even if you're listening to this right now and you've just been sitting on your butt at a desk job watching TV for years and years and years, maybe you're thinking, oh, I don't know, anybody can do it. It's not too late to get up and start moving, and anybody can run 100 miles.
So, Jake, I'm going to rewind here just a little bit. You signed up for a 50-miler 2 months out. How did you put together a training plan, and what did that look like?
So I wasn't worried about pace, right? I was not worried about how fast can I run 50 miles. I was worried about, can my body physically go 50 miles when you have never ran more than 10 miles on this current day? So I was like, all right, you have 2 months to get your body ready for that. So I basically just would go out for runs, and I would just add miles every other day. I would add miles every weekend. So, I learned a lot as I went. I learned what didn't work. I learned what did work, like fueling wise, like what foods I can eat, what my body's going to feel like. And I had some brutal runs where I was like in a lot of pain, and it was very hard. And I always believed in myself. I 100% believed in myself that I was going to be able to do it. But there were some times where it was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. So my plan was for those 2 months was to just add up as much miles as I can. And then, a week out, hopefully I've built myself strong enough that I can go out there and put down 50 miles on my 2 legs. So it wasn't a plan, but I'll tell you what, one of my favorite quotes is, a good plan today is always better than a perfect plan tomorrow. So I didn't sit there and Google what type of diet I should be on. I didn't sit there and Google, how to get ready for 50-mile race. Like, I was just like, I'm going to put my shoes on and I'm going to start running. I'll figure it out as I go.
So you're just basically testing your body with each run to see how far you could do, and if you could then increase that, the following day, and thus until, you got to race day.
Yeah. And suddenly 10 miles, wasn't as hard. Suddenly 12 miles wasn't as hard. But there were times where it felt like I would do, like I had a 20-mile run that literally humbled me beyond belief. And basically, I went for this 20-mile run, and it was in like the summer. I had no fuel plan because I've never gone 20 before.
Oh, yeah.
And at 18, I got hit by such a wall that and the worst part is, like, in the neighborhood I live in, is it's just like a square so I got back to my house at 18, but I told myself I was going to do 20 today. So I had to run past my house twice because I had to do like another 2-mile loops. And it was just like walk, run, completely nauseous, lightheaded. And I get back into my house and I'm like, I need calories now. And so I make a giant, like 1,500 calorie mass gainer shake, just like ice cream and like honey, peanut butter, everything. And as soon as as soon as I press the blend, I completely pass out. And I am like on my hands and knees on the ground with the blender running for like 2 minutes. And I get up, I turn it off, I go to take a sip, throw up on myself.
Oh,
Oh no.
So then I'm like, all right, my digestive system is not feeling it. So I got to just go shower and like, but then I get lightheaded in the shower. So then I lay down I basically pass out again, lay down on the bathroom floor. My girlfriend comes home.
Oh no.
So here's her man who's about to run this big race, who's been sitting here saying, hey, I'm going to do this big race, who's laying naked on the floor. And it's like, was the one time where I was like, and this was about a month out from my race. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I just ran 20 and I'm like a shell of a human. So yeah, there were some humbling moments, but it was
And your
awesome.
girlfriend's like, I don't know how I feel about you doing this.
Yeah. She was just like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
so then how did you get over that? Because some people would tap at that moment and be like,
I
you know
think,
what?
yeah.
I'm in over my head. I'm
Yeah.
in over my head. I need more time. I'm not going to be able to run this 50-mile race. How'd you get over that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that is true is a lot of people, hit the first bit of adversity and they quit. I mean, people are so easy to throw in the towel, but I think that I have just cultivated a mindset my entire life that has been so resistant to ever throwing in that towel. I mean, throughout football and, when I was younger, trying to get to the Division I level, to trying to get into vet school, to, the workouts with football, I've just cultivated a mindset, and this stuff takes time. You're not going to be able to do it overnight. Even like I sit here and I'm like saying like, yeah, I've got this strong mind of that I can resist adversity. There's still times where you know, I slack but I beat myself up for it. But so basically you just need to think like, how bad do I really want this? Yeah, right now this isn't good, but I'm going to become stronger from going through this. And I think my entire life that has been such a theme that I've used, and it's helped me so much more. Like it frustrates me. And you ask me why, if you were to ask me, why am I doing this? Like, why am I going on these podcasts? Why am I starting, this YouTube channel? Why am I sitting here and trying to preach this stuff? It's because I just watch so many of my friends and so many people I know that are just so quick to throw in the towel. And they're sitting there and they're overwhelmed. They're constantly underachieving, and they look in the mirror and they're not happy, but they don't understand that this doesn't have to be it for you. You can change this. You don't have to put the drugs down, put the bottle down, stop going out every weekend. You're not thinking right. You're not speaking right. Just take a cold shower, man. Go for a run, do something. You can accomplish stuff if you really want it. And so I think if people try and cultivate that mind and they just challenge themselves over and over again and understand that this is all part of a growth process, I mean, I think they'll live much better lives and they'll help others. So I guess if you want to extrapolate my whole reason for doing this stuff, it's that message right there.
I love it. That's definitely what got me into the sport. The not wanting to not live a life of mediocrity, to just fall into the same traps that many of our family and friends fall into, work that 9-to-5 job and just fall into mediocrity where life tells you what to do. You don't tell life what to do.
Absolutely.
So how did that first 50-mile race go then?
It was such a test ground where I didn't know what to expect. So I was really excited just to see what would happen. And there were a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of, I will say, well, the one thing that really surprised me and that I absolutely loved about it is everybody running all these ultra races are so nice and they're so supportive. So I absolutely loved the competitiveness, but also the camaraderie that's within it. So that was a big shock and I loved it. The overall, I mean, the race went well. There was a stretch of about 10 miles between mile 30 and 40 where I was in just, a dark place where I was fighting. I ran out of water, completely underestimated how much water you need to drink. And I had to run through this field for about 5 miles that was just in the middle, like of the middle of the day, beating hot sun in July, and I had no water, lips chapped, and it was just like that was the toughest stretch of that race. It was just because you're so fatigued and you like don't have the water. And but I learned a lot from that race. I finished strong. I believe it was, I know I finished first in my age group, and I think I finished, I want to say top 10 overall for men, I believe. But it was but yeah, it was an awesome experience, and I learned a ton from it, you know.
That's really cool. That's one thing to run a 50-mile race when 4 miles is hard, and to do it in 2 months, but then to place top 10 overall, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And so
thank you.
What kept you, so you ran 50 miles, you did it, you checked it off the list. Why are you continuing to pursue and go into the longer distances now?
Because I was still standing when I crossed the finish line. And I say that with a little bit of hyperbole, but I knew that there was more to it. I still haven't found, I think, the peak. This 100K, I think I was about, you know, I really tested myself, but, you know, and then the next, you know, I just wanted to see what else I'm made of. And I fell in love with it. It felt like I was, you know, a constant underdog going into these things. And it felt right. So I just wanted to keep seeing what I was capable of. I knew I had more in me.
So I'm curious about the 100K experience now. So you did a 50, you did another one. How did your 100K go?
Yeah, so the 100K, the scene of the 100K was that it's in the winter, it's in January in Wisconsin. Notoriously known as one of the toughest races in the Midwest. It had a completion rate. So this is the first year it's been called the Frigid Fox. It was formerly known as the Frozen Otter. And it has a completion rate, I believe, about 20%. So it's a pretty tough race. But this is one that I've on the bucket list that I've wanted to run. And training for it was really good. I had a really good training block. Felt like I've been getting stronger and stronger, you know. And I get into the 100K, and it was actually pretty good weather. It was in, I think, like the 20s the most of the day. Not a ton of snow on the ground. We did have some icy areas, but it went well for the first 25 miles. I hit mile 26-ish, and I start just cramping really bad. So I was exceptionally sick leading up to the entire race for that week.
Oh, no.
And I totally underestimated how much like electrolytes you'd be losing and how much fluid loss you'd be losing, because you don't feel like you're sweating a ton. And then also you're perspirating a lot. So because of the cold air, especially, so you're losing a lot, I feel like. And I just started cramping violently, and my legs would start to like give out, and everything was just going south. I was like starting to get nauseous. The cold was starting to get to me a little bit. And so I'm starting to panic a little bit. I have 32 more miles left, and I get to this one aid station. So I get to the first out and back. So it's the first out. So I have to go back, and I'm sitting there, and my uncle is like, "You look like hell." And I'm like, "Well, I feel like hell." And I kind of slammed some Pedialyte, you know, do some salt pills. And I'm like, all right, let's cook through this thing. So I start heading back. I'm on my way back, and I completely my body completely implodes on itself.
Oh,
I'm
no.
taking steps, and every step, my entire leg is locking up, and my legs are like giving out. I'm like holding onto trees because I can't like stand. I'm very nauseous, and it's just like complete disaster. My Fitbit dies, and I'm just ready. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I'm halfway. I am nowhere close. So I started getting the negative thoughts that were saying, you know, it's okay. It's only got a finish rate of 20%. You know, you have been running for only less than a year. It's all right. Maybe you could just walk the whole way. So I started kind of just walking and struggling, but I started being like okay with failing. I started feeling okay with giving up. And then I started getting really angry. And I said to myself, out loud, I'm starting to talk to myself and I'm starting to get really angry. And I say, you know who thinks like this? Mother effers that lose. And I start like getting extreme. I start building this energy. And as soon as I start building this energy, this guy who's like a volunteer on the trail, he's like, hey, you're doing great. You're in 16th place. So Fitbit's dead. I have no idea what mile I'm at, pace I'm at, nothing. And I'm like, my sole purpose for the next how many miles is to the finish line is I'm going to hunt the dude down in front of me like he's a prey animal. And I'm just, I said, I'm going to start hunting headlamps. I'm just going to start hunting him down. And so I started building this energy, and it got to the point where I tapped into this like animalistic attitude where I started literally coming up. I started sprinting and I started getting behind these people. I'd be like 50 yards away from them. Out loud, I'm like, I know you see me come. I'm like, I know you see me coming. You can feel my presence. And I'm like growling. I'm out loud growling like I'm an animal.
I would not want to be running in front of you.
No, this is crazy. This is absolutely insane. But this is just, what you needed in the moment. And I was like this apex predator. I started hunting these people down one by one. And then I would get up right next to them. And then I'd be like, great job. Keep fighting. And, super supportive. But then afterward, they'd be like, all right, who's next? And so then I would keep going. And I ended up getting in 20 miles. I got up from 16th to 5th. And
wow.
I started thinking about where the trophy is going to go and what my victory speech is going to be like, because I'm about to win this thing. And I miss a left turn. I miss the pink flag, go off course. My brother calls me and he's like, hey, dude, you're 1.5 miles off course. And I'm like, life sucked out of me.
Yeah.
So then I kind of, with my tail in between my legs, come back 1.5 miles. So I'm off course. I end up falling back to 9th. Then I'm at the aid station, and then I get a pacer at that point. My buddy Ian paced me 10 miles to the second out, and then my girlfriend took me home in the second back. And we passed 2 more people, and I finished 7th overall. My goal was to beat David Goggins' time, and I beat his time by – I think I beat his time by like 30, 40 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was – it was top 10 overall. I was so extremely pumped about it. And here's the other thing is afterwards – my body went into complete shutdown mode. So it was about an hour drive from my parents' home to where the race was. We get back to my parents' house. My mom is helping me up the stairs. My girlfriend's helping me up the stairs, and my body completely shuts down. Extremely nauseous. Feel like I'm going to throw up, extremely lightheaded. I just lay flat on the bed, and I am having full body, like violent convulsions, like full body shivers. My feet are bleeding, just like absolute shaking. My heart rate's skyrocketed. I can't grab a breath. I'm like hyperventilating, and this goes on for like 15 minutes. My dog comes up to me, like curls up next to me because I'm pretty sure she thought I was dying. Oh. And it went on for like 20 minutes, and it was just, that was an absolute. I think I laid so much of my body physically, my mentality, my soul into that race. And it was just, it was the most amazing experience of my life. I played college football for 5 years. We played at Washington in front of 100,000 people. And crossing that finish line and accomplishing that was bar none the most amazing thing of my life.
Wow.
That's awesome. So my first thought is you're the next David Goggins. And
the veterinarian style David Goggins.
Yeah. So David Goggins style. I seriously love it. We wanted to jump into this at some point in this podcast. What do you think is harder, football or ultra running?
So it's a good question. And I've thought about it. I've talked about it. Football is like hard on your body. It's a hard, like physical thing to do. It's just difficult, especially the middle linebacker position. It's a difficult thing to do, to read a play in a split second, know where the ball is going, and being able to be in the right spot, which is a major mental task, and then being able to physically accomplish it. And you're going against 300-pound just grown men that are strong and fast. And it's just a physical thing. But ultra running it's a test of the human body. It's a test of the human spirit. It's almost like, I think of it, it's not a game. It's
Almost
it's a
war.
test. Yeah, it is. It's almost war. And it's so hard to explain it to, I guess, people that haven't done it. But
Yeah.
I think the world would be a better place if everyone ran an ultra.
Yeah.
Amen. I agree. There's a new t-shirt quote.
Every time, I run an ultra, it's almost like, the night before, the morning of, as things start off, like just something in my mind just changes to where it's like, okay, I'm going to war, but you're going to war with yourself. Like, I'm going to war with my brain right here today, with my mind, with my soul, to show that, hey, just because the body wants to stop, just because it's tired, just because it's nauseous, just because I have blisters, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop. Like, I'm going to prove that I can overcome the body today. So it is really cool.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's going to get ugly out there, but you have to knock, or you have to answer when there's a knock at the door, or else what do you have to say for yourself? Because you gave up. That's why I love it. It's pure.
If you're approaching an ultra with the mindset that everything's going to go well and you're just going to have a great day out there and roses and daisies, then sorry to tell you, you're in for a rude awakening. Yep. So you have to be ready for that rude awakening when it hits.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I love, you are never more present in life than when you're in pain. And I think almost like ultra running is such like it opens up doors in your mind creatively, and it's just it makes you think and see the world, I think, in a different way. It makes sense of things that may have been confusing you in the past. I just love the mentality of it. I mean, I got a little pushback when I was talking to a veteran runner, and he just said, a lot of people, because I told him that story, and he said, a lot of people, like, you could see them, like, they're like jacked up at the start line, they're hooting and hollering, and then you're like, then it doesn't really work. So, like, is that a really good strategy to bank on? And I'm like, this isn't a strategy. This was like life or death to me in that moment, where it was like, I need to tap into this thing or I'm dead in the water right here. And that's the other thing, is like in football, we used to have this saying where everyone's an All-American in warmups. So you could be at the start line screaming all you want, listening to AC/DC, but what are you going to do when you're not even halfway done with the race? Your legs are shot. You're nauseous. You can't take another step. It's going to be dark soon. It's cold. Then are you that guy still? So that's the difference. And, some people, to them, a 50-mile race is, I was running my first 50-mile race, and there was a guy running a 50K, and we were kind of chatting, and he just said, this is a weekend away from the kids for me. And I'm like, well, this is war.
And that's the thing. That's why you can't compare yourself to other people. That's why you're going to war with yourself, right? Compare yourself to yourself. And if you get people who are literally running 100-mile races every single weekend, and that's just what they do for fun. But that's another cool thing with running, is you can always go up. Because after 100-mile races, there's 200-mile races. After that, there's 800-mile FKTs. Like, you can get faster. There's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
So, Jake, you are now training for your first 100-miler here in June. This podcast, we specialize in the 100-mile distance. So after this year of running, you've had your 250-milers, your 100K, and everything you've learned through that. I guess, what have been your main takeaways from your first year of doing ultras that you're now implementing into training for your first 100-miler?
Yeah. So I think weight training should not be spared. A lot of times, I don't know if this is true, but I kind of thought this when I first started running, is that maybe you should lift less. And I think the races that I continued to lift my legs a ton, I have had stronger performances in. So I think the weight training is important to do. And I think getting your fuel regimen down, there isn't a one trick that fits all for this. I think some people can either pound like, a McDonald's Big Mac on their race day. I personally just like the easy digestible fruit. I love oranges, strawberries, stuff like that. And just, I just like eating the easy digestible stuff. So I think you have to experiment with that on your runs a little bit. So I think if you're going for like a 20-mile run or a 30-mile run, just because you're not going to be that hungry, I would experiment with seeing what your body can take food wise, what works, what doesn't. And then I also think that you just need to string together big weeks. Like one of the biggest changes that I've had going from, my second 50 miler to the 100K that I thought was a big difference that reflected my ability to perform well was instead of on my big leg days where I would like squat heavy, instead of thinking of that being like, that's going to be a lighter run day then, and then I'll do my heavier run day 2 days after. Instead, I chose to put together a big squat day and then go try and run 15 miles at a fast pace. And so I've tried to train myself to run on dead legs. So I guess those would be 3 things that I would say that have just really resonated and that I've noticed after a year of running that have worked and will help.
That's awesome. I just want to repeat what you said about doing your heavy lift days on your heavy run days too. Because like you said, not only are you training to run on tired legs, so, sometimes do your weightlifting before you go do your run. That's so good. But the thing is, and we've talked about this a lot in this podcast, is you want your hard days to be hard and your easy days to be easy. So put your heavyweight days on your heavy run days so that on your recovery days, you can really, truly take it easy.
So when you lift heavy, then you go run 15 miles. Well, I guess my question is, how do you recover from that? What are you doing? Because I've done similar things, and then I've actually felt like I've burned myself out by doing that, to where down the road it's hurting me a little bit from the burnout. And I looking back, I realized I wasn't doing enough for recovery. What are you doing to because you've amped up fast on miles and doing this, so you need your body to fit in that recovery. What are you doing? Is there like nutrition, protein shakes? What is working for you to get those muscles to recover?
I mean, also well, first of all, I'm going to say this. We hear the word burnout a lot in vet school, and I have a few friends that we just are like, we don't believe in that. There's a quote I love that says, you burn out not because of what you do, but because life makes you forget why you do it. So just a little side note, but I know what you mean. So first of all, I have also been lifting my entire life. So it's not like I am new to running and lifting. So I can imagine my body is so used to squatting. I mean, in football, we would squat 2 times a week, So I think if you're new to lifting legs, new to lifting heavy, and you've been a runner your whole life and you want to start incorporating lifting, you need to gradually work into that, because 1, you could have a risk of getting hurt, and 2, you're probably going to have a lot more of a poor performance, like you said, and the risk of burnout. But so I think also is you just have to be very cognizant of your recovery days. You have to be very cognizant of my recovery day is not a day that I just sit on the couch. It's a day where I'm actively moving or doing something. And then, one thing also with lifting is the science behind lifting is you'll get stronger tendons with the increased muscle mass. So I think if you over time gradually increase your lifting with your running, it's going to, 1, prevent injury, and 2, it'll allow you to run more efficiently on dead legs. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. But
yeah, so you're just saying gradually, if you're not a big lifter, just go gradual. Don't just dive in and then, go run 20 miles after you maxed out for the first time. But
the other thing I will add is I focus a lot on my heart rate. A lot of times I don't know what I'm doing, but yeah. But if I go for a run and I'm overtrained and I'm going for an easy run, my pace is light and easy, and my heart rate is skyrocketed, that's a signal to me that I'm overtrained. But I think more so when I go for a long run after a heavy lift day, I'm not burning my pace unless my heart rate is low. And then I'm like, all right, yeah, I feel good today. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
So I think
I
listen to
know.
your heart rate quite a bit.
That makes total sense there.
Yeah, that's actually a big mistake I've seen a lot of runners make is, I feel like in the running world, we always teach like lift weights, because runners do not lift enough. And so a runner is like, okay, I got to start lifting weights. And so then all of a sudden they're like, okay, let's start with like 3-hour-long weightlifting sessions a week. And all of a sudden you went from running, 5 hours a week to now you're working out 8 hours a week because like that's just too much to add at once. You do have to you have to gradually put it in there. Like you said, it's not like if you've never lifted before, it's not like you're gonna go lift for an hour and then go run 15 miles. Of course you're gonna burn out on that.
So
Yeah, exactly.
your 100-mile race is out in Colorado and you live in Wisconsin. And so you're going to be in the mountains, right? You're going to be dealing with some verts.
High elevation.
What are you doing? Because, we live out in Utah. We can get vert, 3 miles from our house. There's a trailhead goes straight up the mountain. And we can get that kind of training in. So how do you get that kind of training to deal with the verts that you're going to deal with in Colorado when you live in Wisconsin?
Yeah, and that was one of my draws to this race is I wanted to face a mountain race of elevation. And so one of the things that I'm doing, a wise man named Jeremy Reynolds once told me that heat is a poor man's elevation. So spending time in the sauna, once it gets warmer here in Wisconsin, I'm going to throw on a sweatshirt and go for a long run on the hot days. That was one thing I did with my cold training is instead of looking at the weather and seeing that on Wednesday it's going to be negative 20 out and Madison's going to be shut down, I was like, that's the day I'm going to run 20 miles. So I welcome the tough days and spending time in the sauna. I'm trying to get up, trying to get my body to kind of simulate elevation and doing some stair climbing a lot because there is going to be a lot of climbing going on with this race. And I remember we played Southern Utah my redshirt freshman year, and I played a decent amount I played like 30 or 40 snaps that game. And that stadium is at like 7,000 feet. And I remember it played a big role where you would, first down, you feel good. And then second and third down, you're sucking wind and you're like, this is abnormal. So yeah, I mean, I definitely have faced it before, and just, I know what my body responds to that. And so it's definitely a big task, but I'm doing my due diligence, I believe.
I like what you said. Yeah, Jeremy Reynolds, heat is a poor man's elevation.
That's great.
That is a great quote for sure. And if you are looking to do a mountain race and you do not live around mountains, we've talked to a few people from the Midwest now, and they all seem to say the same thing: heat, humidity, get out when it sucks. And that's the way to train for it. So 100 miles, I've done it twice now, and it still scares me. I've got my third race coming up here in June.
What race are you doing in June?
I'm doing the Scout Mountain 100. It's up in Idaho.
That'll be awesome, man.
Yeah. And so the second time definitely scared me more than the first. The first was a little naive. But anyways, I want to hear, what about the 100-mile distance has you excited to go for this? And what about the 100-mile distance scares you? And how are you preparing for that?
I feel like a lot of ultra runners would be like, you're not an ultra runner until you've done 100 miles. So
false.
I know it's false, but there's an ego here that I just need to accomplish this. So I'm drawn to it almost in a way of that there's a bunch of ultra runners out there who are probably really supportive of me, but in my mind, they're like, this kid is not a runner yet. And he's sitting here acting like he is. Like, wait till he runs 100. So they're probably really supportive of me, but deep down, that's what I just believe. And that's going to be my motivation for it. So I'm excited just to kind of almost like solidify myself. It's almost like I'm going out there to prove to myself that, you could do something big in this sport. So
like I belong in this world.
Yeah. So to me, it's the test of, I guess it's like the big test, right? It's the
Yeah.
three digits. It's,
Yeah.
everything like that. So, but what scares me about it is, I mean, not much, to be honest with you. I I mean, I just believe in myself. Like I know it's gonna suck. I know it's gonna be hard, but I wouldn't sign up for it if I wasn't gonna be brought to the brink of exhaustion. So
Yeah.
fear isn't the right word for it. There's things that I'm tactically worried about in a way that I'm handling by preparation, but it's not afraid, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Would you say that you're excited for the suck and excited for the hard? Like that's a better
You
word than afraid?
Oh, I am so excited for what it's going to do to my body, the things I'm going to learn about myself, and just, the feeling of going through something like that is life-changing. So I'm really excited about that. And it's, everybody wants to be a beast until it's time to do a beast do. Everybody wants to be a
Yeah.
diamond, but nobody's willing to get cut. Everybody wants to run 100 miles, but they're not willing to run the first 95. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited for what it's, who, the difference of person that I am when I step into that race versus when I come out of it. So,
I like that concept of replacing fear with excitement and being
mhm,
excited for, like you said, what you're going to learn, what it's going to do to your body. I will say that that is one thing that scares me is, oh, what is this going to do to my body? How am I going to feel afterwards? But like David Goggins says, he likes the pain because he said he earned it.
Yeah.
He earned this pain. And
absolutely.
I really like that concept. And I also want to throw this out there. Something else that you've taught us is a little audience in your head that thinks you can't do anything can be really motivating. You just need to imagine
Yeah,
that that everyone around you thinks that you can't do anything, and then you just have to prove them wrong.
completely. I mean, that's so powerful to be able to go in your head to a place where I mean, everyone finds motivation in different ways. Everybody can dig themselves out of a dark hole in different ways, whether it's tying it to somebody or for somebody, or tying it to people that are trying to bury you, you know? So there's been times where I've used both. I'd say more than not, I've had a lot of times in my life where I've been told that you're not going to be able to do this. So that has been a constant motivation for me, I think, in my life is to constantly be proving people wrong. So,
I love it, and that can be a great motivator. Now, this is like kind of a random thought, but I'm just wondering, do you feel like just from what I've noticed from the books we've read and the people we've talked to, I feel like this mindset of like proving people wrong, I feel like is generally a male mindset. Tell me if I'm wrong. Generally. And then I
I,
feel like I see a lot of women who it's more like I feel like the mindset is more like I'm just going to do this for myself. Doesn't matter what people think. Do you know what I'm saying? That's just what I've noticed.
I mean, you see it in football. I mean, you're in a locker room of 100, I guess, guys that are just, always trying to like prove it to each other. I mean, we love each other, but yeah, I mean, the cultures that I've been around is it's constantly been around guys where you're always trying to outwork, you're always trying to outbench, you're always trying to outprove the guy next to you. But it's not in a way where you want them to do worse, where
Right.
that way you do better. It's in a way where you brought your best, but it still wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
So Jake, you run for some charities and you raise some awareness through some mental health things. Can you expound on that and tell our audience what you're running for and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I raise money directly for a charity called Movember, which is for men's mental health. And then I also like represent a childhood cancer charity that my baby cousin was diagnosed with cancer a few years back. She's currently in remission. It's a rare pediatric cancer called Ewing sarcoma. My family
Mm.
started this foundation called the Little Warrior Foundation. I mean, they are just exceptionally good at spreading the message, and getting the word out there because it is a rare cancer. So there's not a lot of funding going into the research. So they've been kind of saying, you know, if the government's not going to fund them, we'll bring the money to them. So those are the two charities that I represent. I raise money directly for the men's mental health, but then I wear the gear of Little Warriors. They have amazing, really comfortable clothes and awesome gear. And I encourage people to check out both of those charities because they do amazing work. It's an honor to represent both of them. And I would happily like contact anybody if they want to learn more about it or get involved in the missions. If anybody wants to like message me on Instagram or anything like that.
Perfect. And we'll put those links in the show notes. And if people wanted to reach out to you specifically, where would be the best place to reach you?
My Instagram at Jake Rastas is the best way to just, direct message me on there. I check it every now and then. So yeah.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes too.
So Jake, before we let you go, I got just a couple more questions left. First off, what would be, you've given a lot of good advice, especially on mindset here for people who are trying to run their first ultras. What would be your top piece of advice if your buddy came up to you, saw that you were running 100 miles and decided, I want to do that. And so like, Jake, what advice do you got for me? I'm going to run 100 miles.
So the first thing I would say is just sign up. Sign up for something, because so many people are going to sit here and talk about all these things they're going to do, but they never follow through with it. My buddy and I, the guy who's in the military, who got me into running, we have a word for it. We call it word salad, where people just sit here and they talk word salad. They're just going to say all these things that they're going to do, but they never follow through with it. So do not be that person. So what I think is that just sign up for something. And like the quote I said earlier about a good plan today is always going to be better than a perfect plan tomorrow. What that does is when you put your name on the registration form for a race, is it makes it very real. And a clock starts ticking from the moment that you press sign up. And two things are going to happen. Either one, you're going to show up and you're going to crush it. Or two, you're going to be a coward and not show up. And there's going to be a piece of paper with your name on it. And if you have any pride in your name, it's going to be a piece of paper with your name on it, and it's going to be an empty box because you didn't show up. So what that does is it makes it real, and it makes you, instead of like, one day I want to run a marathon or one day I want to run a 100-mile race, it's like, oh, I have to run a 100-mile race. I have to pull this off. You are a different monster when you have to pull something off instead of just wanting to pull it off. So that's the first thing I would do, is get your feet wet, commit. The second thing I would say is, which is actually like, I guess, practical advice, is just to not worry about pace. Like I said earlier, just try and build your miles as much as you can until you can comfortably put down some high volume days. And then from there is when you back down and try and run those faster.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I think that's great advice. Don't be a word salad person.
Word salad.
Yeah, that hits home, like everyone talks, but very few people follow through. So
exactly. Be the kind of person who follows through. I love it.
Now, I got one more question that's a little more off topic here. So with you being a veterinarian or going in school, a lot of people run with dogs, right? And people sometimes want to go run long distances with their dogs. At what point, I guess, what would be like your advice if someone says, hey, I think I want to go take my dog out for this 25-mile run with me? What would be your advice on like packing food, or what the owner should be?
Like, how and when should you feed and water your dog on the long run?
On a long run. How do you deal with a dog on a long run? Like, what's the best manner, you think?
So the first thing I will tell you, if you have a Nordic breed dog, which is a like thick coat dog that belongs in the winter areas, and you live in the South, you are not taking that dog for a 20-mile run. That is a horrible idea. So yeah, I mean, I would just be smart, because your dog is going to overheat. That's the first thing. Make sure it's safe. The second thing I would say is, just bring a lot of water. Dogs aren't built like humans. Dogs are not distance runners like humans. Humans have been born to be distance runners. It's in our genetic evolution, but it's in our genetic lineage. Dogs have not been like that. So I don't know if I would say even take your dog on a 20-mile run. You could take them on a hike, but bring plenty of
Yeah.
water. Definitely bring them treats because they deserve treats if they're going hiking 20 miles with you. So yeah, I mean, I would say just don't be dumb. Don't let that dog overheat.
All right. That's good advice for everything. Don't be dumb.
Yeah.
And don't overheat.
Well, Jake, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. We've really enjoyed hearing about your mindset and how you just were able to do so much within 1 year. I think it's inspiring, and I mean, I really think that our audience, I know I took a lot away from this, like the whole burnout thing. You
I feel
called me out on
inspired.
that. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, oh man, you definitely put some people in their place, I think, with this podcast.
Yeah, but it's needed. It's definitely needed.
Yeah. I mean, I was being a little bit facetious with you. I didn't mean to be rude.
Oh, not rude at all. Not rude at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's totally good. Well, thank you, Jake, and good luck on your 100-miler. We are looking forward to seeing how that goes for you.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Well, big thanks goes out to Jake Rastas for sharing us his crazy ultra running journey. Holy cow, Mel.
I'm serious. It's like a mini David Goggins.
Like, after talking to him, it's like there's no excuses.
No,
Like,
that's how I feel. I feel so ready to one of my favorite things that he said was how he would plan his hard runs on the days with the worst weather. And I'm like, dude, that's what we got to start doing. No excuses.
yeah, literally, because you don't know what the weather's going to be like on race day.
Exactly.
You know, and if we make excuses for our runs, how many other things in life are we making excuses for, you know?
Right.
And so yeah, that is definitely a great point. Was that your takeaway?
I'll share my takeaway.
Okay.
I mean, basically my takeaway was mental toughness. I just feel like it put me back in this like David Goggins mindset of no excuses, like what we were just saying. And it just made me think about the areas in my life that I need to improve on. And the thing that he said about burnout doesn't exist. I was like, dang, because I've experienced a lot of burnout. And I'm doing like air quotes because I'm like, is this thing even real? I don't know. But I've experienced a lot of burnout in my life where I push myself super, super hard and then I burn out. I push myself super, super hard and I burn out. And it's just making me realize, you know, when I burn out, it's because I lose sight of my why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And so that just motivated me to keep my why in sight and to think about what my why is on a consistent basis so I don't lose sight of it. And also, I need to flip it and get out of bed on time in the morning. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I had the same takeaway with Jake, and yeah, burnout happens because you lose sight of your why, you know? So when you don't want to go run, don't just say, I'm burned out, I'm not going to go today. You're like, why am I feeling this way, you know?
Well, and there's a difference between burnout and overtrain.
Yeah.
Like if you, like he was saying,
The
if
heart
you're
rate.
noticing that your heart rate's too high, your HRV is all over the place, it's unbalanced, that is your sign to rest, but take an active rest day. Don't eat potato chips and watch TV all day, even though that's fun to do every once in a while, but you don't want to do that on every single rest day.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So rather than burn out, assess your why, you know, and yeah, you can't overtrain, but you know, really keep note of your why. Why are you running? You know, why are you going for this big goal?
Exactly.
Because most of the time we're going for these goals, not for just like running that distance. Most of the time we want to run that distance for something more to change in our life.
You can't run 100 miles just to run 100 miles.
Yeah.
It won't happen if that's
Yeah.
your reason why.
Yeah, there's got to be something bigger behind it.
Exactly.
You know, and we need to write that down, post it on your wall, put it on your phone.
Tattoo it on your forehead.
Yes. On your wife's forehead. Whatever it takes.
Put a tattoo on my forehead.
Whatever it takes. So, anyways, big thank you to Jake. Thank you, Jake, for coming out on the pod. We are excited to hear how his 100-mile goes, and we'll probably have him on after the 100.
I cannot wait for that recap.
Yes.
That's going to be a good recap.
Yes. Everyone, first 100-miler is always the best.
And last thing we briefly mentioned this in the podcast, but Jake has started a YouTube where he kind of shares his experiences of ultra running and shares some more motivation. And that is in the show notes if you want to check that out.
Good stuff by Jake. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening to us today. If this podcast, if this episode has helped you with your mindset and taught you a thing or two about mental toughness and how to approach ultras, then please share it with someone that you know who is also going for similar goals as you. By doing so, it helps us grow and helps us to be able to keep bringing on great guests like Jake and to keep helping you get that 100-mile belt buckle.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us here on Trail to 100, and we will talk to you all next time.
See you guys.